On today's CHGO White Sox Podcast, we will be discussing Chris Getz' recent comments from the GM meetings. Will Garrett Crochet be traded? Is Luis Robert here forever? What is happening? Next on the CHGO White Sox Podcast. Coming to you live from Studio A of our CHGO offices here in the west loop of Chicago. I'm your host, Sean Anderson. Alongside me, Vinnie Duber, our CHGO White Sox beat writer. You can read his work at ALLCITY.com, and you can sign up to be a diehard today at allchgo.com/diehard. You get access to all of our written content up at allchgo.com. You get access to our CHGO Discord Lounge. You get discounts on shirts and merch. And speaking of merch, you get a free shirt when you sign up. So head over to allchgo.com/diehard today to sign up. We're being produced today by Sarah.
Hello.
Hello. And you might be wondering where the man in the middle, Herb Lawrence, is. It's his birthday. So happy birthday, Herb. No one wants to come to work on their birthday, so that's why he's not here. He's fine. He's very happy not being at work, so congrats to Herb. Make sure you're hitting that thumbs up button. Make sure you're subscribing to the CHGO Sports YouTube channel. On today's show, we'll be talking about Chris Getz' comments from the GM meetings. He had some from yesterday. He had some from today, and we'll be talking about them. Garrett Crochet news, Luis Robert news, and then we'll jump into some free agent possibilities for the outfield for the 2025 White Sox. Thank you to Connor for saying we have a great show in the chat. Appreciate it. And even HBS saying, hey guys, love your shows and watch them daily. You might not see me in the chat because I have class and work at those times, but trust me, I'm still there. Keep up the great work. You guys are awesome. Appreciate everyone hanging out with us. And maybe you're watching us on Samsung TV. You can now catch us on Roku TV, Samsung TV, and more. I think we're just working on car phones now, but I'm hearing that there's no car phones anymore.
Car, like the ones that were in the car? Yeah. I'm not even old enough for that.
We're working on adding LCD screens to car phones and then getting us on those car phones. All right, Vinnie Duber, our CHGO White Sox beat writer. Let's hear a little bit from Chris Getz. The main topic that was broached by beat reporters down in San Antonio this week, Lamont Pope and Daryl Van Schouwen being the main ones, the first topic was Garrett Crochet. Getz said, with a pitcher like Garrett Crochet, you have an opportunity to get both high-impact, upper-level talents. Now, you don't want to pigeonhole yourself. You want to focus on getting the best return that you can for your club. Some organizations, their prospects are at the top of their minor leagues, and others are further away. That's a part of the assessment process. And he said Garrett had an outstanding year, and he's wearing a White Sox uniform, and he could very easily see him making an opening day start for us as well. So, Vinny, how did we get here to a point where Chris Getz does seemingly be saying Chris Getz won't be a White Sox, but then also saying
Chris Getz will be a White Sox. Garrett Crochet
won't be a White Sox, but also saying that, hey, I could also see him in a White Sox uniform.
Hey, this is a rerun of last winter. Just swap out Dylan Cease's name for Garrett Crochet's, and you're going to have exactly what's going to happen this offseason. Who knows when a trade might get done or might not, but I think the point that and the takeaway there is that the White Sox have no urgency to get rid of him. It's not like, oh boy, they got to get rid of him by the winter meeting or by the end of the winter meetings, or they got to get rid of him before spring training starts. They got to get rid of him before opening day. It's not true. They have him under team control for 2 more years. They can trade him when a team finally decides that it wants to meet the asking price that Chris Getz has. You heard what? I mean, when we were down in Nashville at the winter meetings last year, it was Dylan Cease, Dylan Cease, Dylan Cease. Look at all these teams that are going to trade for Dylan Cease. Oh my God, he's going to be the most popular man in the world this week, and he's going to go somewhere. And it ended up not being until March, because that's when Chris Getz finally got a team on the phone to give him something, or to give him the equivalent in his mind of what he was going to be giving up in Dylan Cease. So to get Drew Thorpe and Jairo Iriarte, which was a pretty well-reviewed trade at the time for the most part. That's what he was waiting for. And I think you're going to see Chris Getz wait for that again with Garrett Crochet. He does not need to get rid of him, but he has an opportunity here to bring back an amount of talent. Now, I'll say this in comparing Crochet and Cease would seem to me to be a little bit more of a sure thing at that point last year if you're a team that's trying to acquire him. Granted, I thought Garrett Crochet was nothing but impressive in 2024. He got to the end, 32 starts, even though that workload was managed, not a peep about a negative physical effect, right, at any point in his first year as a starter. But Dylan Cease didn't have any injury history as a major leaguer, and he had finished second in the Cy Young vote fairly recently as well. So that would seem to be a little bit more attractive because the amount of control is the same. Dylan Cease had 2 last winter, and now Garrett Crochet has 2 at this point this winter. So I think we'll see when something like that might happen, but we're going to be talking about this all winter long, and there's a potential that Chris Getz sits around and just waits until the right deal comes walking across the table.
I don't want to be doing this all winter long, Vinny. I would really like him to trade him before 2025. Let's just flip that calendar anew and get rid of Garrett Crochet. I'm all for keeping him, but it does seem like it's going to be pretty impossible to keep him. And I think there was a quote here from Getz saying, "We've obviously been very excited what he has become in a White Sox uniform. That said, we have to be very honest with ourselves with where we're at." I could still talk myself into, hey, he's only 25 years old, and in 10 years he might be winning the NL Cy Young for the Atlanta Braves. Oh no, that's just Chris Sale. But it is about making sure they get the right value. And I do wonder how Chris reflects on that Cease trade, because you bring up the main parts of that trade being Drew Thorpe, Iriarte, both of those being pitching prospects. It seems, as he does give the quote, they're looking for a position player return. Like maybe that is just of longer focus. And if he's just going to have to keep squeezing and squeezing and squeezing and waiting and waiting and waiting for that package to show up, maybe it is possible we see Garrett Crochet starting opening day for the White Sox again in 2 kind of surprise ways. One, oh, wow, look, now he's a starter. And hey, look who's still here, Garrett Crochet. I think what was interesting was it does seem like the extension talk doesn't seem to be a hiccup anymore. It seems like any team that will be trading for Garrett Crochet will be giving him an extension no matter what, because you don't have to worry about the postseason. And it does seem like Garrett will at least be open to the talks.
Well, I think I would think the opposite. I would think that, yeah, it's not an issue because I don't think it exists. I mean, the reason that he was asking for a contract extension was to protect himself physically against what might be pushing it past where he probably should have been pushing it in his first year as a starter. If he was going to pitch into October for a team that acquired him at the trade deadline last July, hey, give me a little assurance, give me a contract extension so I have some security if I push my body here in the playoffs this season. And I think we've heard various things about how that maybe didn't keep teams away, and Chris Getz just didn't hear the offer that he wanted, or you would think logically that might make somebody out there more hesitant than they would be now. I don't think anything like that exists currently, and I don't think anybody needs to give him an extension in order to acquire him. They might want to, because it'd be nice to, if you're going to trade the kind of prospects that Chris Getz probably is looking for, to get a little bit more use out of Garrett Crochet than just 2 years. But 2 years ain't nothing, and this guy's was a really, really good all-star level pitcher last year. We're going to have to see how it shakes out, but I do think that position player idea, which we read about from Bruce Levine, that he really focused on that yesterday after Chris Getz spoke, the idea that they're looking for a number of position players in return, not just for Garrett Crochet, but in any move they make this offseason, whether that's going out and signing somebody or making a trade involving somebody else. They understand where their strength is right now, even in both the majors and the minor leagues. Pitching, they would like to balance things out a little bit, not necessarily take away from the pitching if they don't have to, but bringing up that level of hitting that they have in the organization. It makes logical sense that you would trade from your strength to address your weakness. But that being said, I still think that Garrett Crochet looks like the kind of player you should be rebuilding around, like you brought up. But this is the situation the White Sox are in. 2 years of Garrett Crochet might not be enough to have him be effective for a contending White Sox team. In fact, I don't think many folks think it would be enough. And I believe he was asked about the idea of an extension, and he used the phrase, "It's easier said than done." That is true just because obviously players earn that right to go to free agency and test the waters. They might not want. Garrett Crochet and his camp maybe aren't open to, they said they're open to an extension, but they might not be kind of open to the extension that the White Sox want to give, right? We've heard Jerry bristle at the idea of just the kind of huge contracts that players get these days. Garrett Crochet looks like he's on his way to being the kind of player who gets that kind of a contract. The White Sox might not be willing to do that right now. They're in a place where they're decreasing payroll and they're just rebuilding. I mean, you had video being tweeted out by Daryl of Chris Getz bringing up talent acquisition. Again, that's an early stage rebuild term right there, and it's why we think that this thing is still got years left on it.
Yeah, right. And that's the thing, too, is not only is he just looking for position players and making sure that at least the headliner is a top hitting prospect, but it's also, they're not looking for a 25-year-old, right? They're not looking for somebody who's on the same timeline as Crochet. They're probably looking for somebody 22 or younger. If they can get a teenager, they're probably going to be, fairly excited because you have such a growth ceiling that person could still find and develop as they grow into their body. So it's a tightrope that he is walking. Our guy Ellie in the chat saying he would like 3 top 100 players. I think that's the one thing that stuck out from this trade deadline was Miguel Vargas, of all players, and we saw how bad he was after the trade deadline, was the only player near a top 100 like prospect that was dealt at the deadline. Do you think
to the White Sox?
To the White Sox.
Yeah.
But no, but just in general, I mean, in Baseball America, there wasn't a single top 100 prospect dealt. Like he was the most fringe player to the top 100 that I think you could see that was dealt. But with Crochet, how much of a determination is the actual free agent market? Burns is out there likely to get a $200 million contract. We've seen those contract negotiations take a very long time, even leading into spring training. We see the Cease negotiations even take into spring training. Do you think that Crochet being near the top starting pitchers available will kind of accelerate the market? Are teams going to wait until what happens with the actual free agents to figure this out? Like, what do you think is more likely, a team spending $200 million or a team giving up top prospects for a player?
It depends on the team, really, at the end of the day. And you say what sort of, just here's a different question to what you asked, but like what sort of effect would like Corbin Burns being available as a free agent have on Garrett Crochet and vice versa? There are going to be teams out there who are going to say it's only money. We'll give Corbin Burns $200 million if it means we don't have to give up any prospects. There are going to be other teams that are like, man, our budget's already pretty high or as high as we want to take it. We'll be willing to part with a few prospects if it means getting Garrett Crochet, who, by the way, would be extraordinarily affordable, relatively speaking, over the next couple of years onto the roster. So it depends on the team, but the market, if you ask me what I'm preparing for, I've gotten used to the fact that the free agent market and even the trade market, as you mentioned, takes forever these days. I mean, we used to live in a world a long time ago at this point, but not so long ago, where everything got done at the winter meetings. And if you didn't have your roster in place by New Year's Day, you were running a little bit behind, right? Now, even the White Sox, who weren't contending last year, were adding after opening day, adding Tommy Pham, adding Mike Clevenger after opening day. So I don't think it really ever ends. I think that window has just been stretched so wide. And if Corbin Burns is still sitting around in February waiting for a job, maybe Garrett Crochet is too. Or maybe a team that needed to fill a starting, top of the rotation starting pitching spot said, give us Garrett Crochet because we don't need to pay him nearly as much. The negotiations aren't nearly as steep as they are with Burns' agent, that kind of thing. So I think you could see anything. And maybe this does differ wildly from what happened last year with Cease because maybe something does get done at the winter meetings. Maybe there's a sweepstakes all of a sudden. But I've learned to be very patient when it comes to waiting on these baseball offseason moves because it just lasts forever now.
Yeah, Burns was dealt on February 1st of 2024 from the Brewers to the Orioles last year, and then Cease ended up being dealt March 14th to the Padres. So you never know. We could be waiting until February. We could be having, I think, about 50 headlines mentioning Garrett Crochet going somewhere. We'll see if we can...
Between now and then, you mean?
Count out how many Dylan Cease headlines we had last year.
There were a lot.
And we'll see if Garrett Crochet surpasses that. Hit that thumbs up button. Make sure you're subscribing to the CHGO Sports YouTube channel. We got more on Garrett Crochet right after the break, but we want to let you know about our friends over at Empire and Sunnyside. Vinny, tell them about Empire.
With Empire Today, you get shop-at-home convenience, the right product for your needs, quick and professional installation, and a low price guarantee. Empire Today is the best place to get new flooring, so of course they have copycats, but Empire can't be beaten on quality, service, or speed, so competitors advertise low-quality products that Empire simply will not carry. Empire will not promise the lowest prices because anyone who does that is putting flooring in your home that they would not put in theirs. Empire keeps shopping for floors simple with a curated product selection. Empire's philosophy is to help you find what you need, not to overwhelm you with thousands of choices and substitutes. What they leave out of their selection is as important as what they put in. Empire's product team exhaustively combs through thousands of product samples each and every year to find the perfect styles. Check out Empire's virtual floor designer. It is a great way to see how new floors will look in any space. It's easy. Just snap a picture and instantly see how new floors will look in your room. Schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can receive a $350 off discount when they use the promo code CHGO. Restrictions do apply. See EmpireToday.com/CHGO for details. 588-2300 Empire
Today. We also want to let you know about our friends over at Sunnyside. Sunnyside Cannabis Dispensary is here to elevate your fall. Sunnyside is your home for judgment-free cannabis shopping. They have crazy selection with over 100 different strains to choose from, with easy online ordering and in-store pickup. Wherever you are in Illinois, Sunnyside has a location for you. They have spots as far south as Champaign and as far north as South Beloit. I'm fond of the Elmwood Park location, so stop into a store nearest you for expert guidance from their staff or select from high-quality lines like Cresco or Florical, and available now. Good news is new limited time offer, Island Vibes. They're available in disposable vape, 510 carts, and live resin gummies. So go pick up your Good News LTO Island Vibes today at Sunnyside by visiting sunnyside.shop for bright buys every day, including 50% off your first 3 online purchases. That's 50% off your first 3 online purchases using promo code HICHGO at checkout to qualify. Exclusions apply. Sunnyside Cannabis Dispensary. Bright buys every day. Only for 21 plus or Illinois medical card holders. All right, let's get into the teams that possibly could trade for Garrett Crochet. There were some talks between Buster Olney and Jeff Passan on Garrett Crochet. Olney saying that he thinks it's a slam dunk that Crochet will be traded. I think Vinnie and I agree here. And the two teams that only are watching are the Mets and Red Sox. And Jeff Passan added in that teams are trying to acquire Crochet knowing that he will sign an extension. I think if you offer a guy $100 million plus, it's probably easy to say yes. It's just about making sure that the 60s and the 50s and the 2s and the 3s are right. Like it's 162 versus 165. That's a big difference when you're talking about millions of dollars.
Absolutely.
Stupid times. All right. What do we make of the Mets and Red Sox being favorites? Is that anything to do with the Mets missing out on, making it to the World Series, losing to the Dodgers, and then the Red Sox? I mean, they're kind of the team that's looking on the outside in. The Rays are always kind of in this, trying to find a star and then, loading up. But Blue Jays, Yankees, Orioles, they've kind of had their team built. Red Sox kind of looking for that star?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Red Sox are definitely trying to get back to that level. I mean, you got a Yankee team that just made the World Series. You've got, like you said, a Blue Jays team that has shown no shyness about spending. The Orioles are loaded with young talent, and the Rays are the Rays. So if you're going to, fight your way back to the top of the AL East, you need to be in that arms race, right? And no better way to be in the arms race than to go get an arm like Garrett Crochet's. Mets are in a similar situation, though. I mean, yeah, they've accomplished a little bit more in the recent past in terms of playoff success, but they have a dogfight every single year, right? The Braves and the Phillies are there, and then you even get a Marlins team jumping up and making the playoffs a couple times in the last half decade or so. So I don't think that those teams can kind of sit idly by and just kind of hope. They've got to go out and challenge the other teams in those two respective divisions. I think if you're an NL West team, you got to feel the same way, right? Because of how amazingly stacked that division was this year. And then, there are going to be other teams out there as well that are interested in Crochet, but Mets and Red Sox certainly make a lot of sense. And I think the Red Sox are very logical as a team that is going to be trying to make some big splashes.
Do you think he's more John Neese 2.0 or Aaron Heilman 1.5? I really didn't like the Neese comment, but then Connor coming in with the Aaron Heilman 1.5 really got me going.
Aaron Heilman at one point lived in the subdivision that I grew up in.
Did he really?
He did.
Nice guy?
I'd never met him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Well, Aaron Heilman, maybe he's a nice guy, but Vinnie knows where he lives, so he can probably egg his house. All right. And hey, Aaron Heilman, if your house does get egged, it wasn't us.
Also, I don't think he lives there anymore.
Well, there you go.
I believe it was a brief stay.
Okay. All right. There's your Aaron Heilman report. Again, we wouldn't get rid of Crochet. I think the whole idea is that the owner came out and said that he wouldn't be giving a contract of $100+ million. Hasn't given a contract to $100+ million to anybody, and pitchers specifically.
Listen, I think that's a great question. Why would you get rid of Crochet? I agree. But the White Sox are in a position where they have few opportunities to get that talent in a hurry or in bunches, right? I mean, you all look back to the trades that Rick Hahn made when he kind of launched his rebuilding project, and the big prospect packages and returns that he got back that really set the stage for the entire future. I mean, you were talking about 3 trades that brought in a very significant percentage of what everybody projected was going to be the roster of the future. Chris Getz hasn't had that, and while I think that the C-Steal last year got him 2 well-thought-of pitching prospects, he doesn't have that group of position players, right? He inherited Colson Montgomery and Edgar Caro. Those 2 guys could be great, but they're only 2 guys. And so I think Chris Getz sees a rare opportunity to go out and get a few more guys. And this is a long-term thing. Maybe Garrett Crochet isn't going to be part of the White Sox past 2 years if they were to hang on to him. Maybe that extension, as Chris Getz said, easier said than done. And like you mentioned there, Sean, a distaste from Jerry Reinsdorf, stated publicly. I mean, we're not just guessing here. Stated publicly for those kind of huge contracts, which are becoming so more and more common in among the best players in baseball, of which Garrett Crochet could be one.
And at least, there's part of the whole thought process into it is the control. Only 2 years left for Crochet. There's a comment that we'll get to a little bit later on Robert. Robert has 3 years of control, so even if you did want to hold on to him a little bit to make sure that his value was at the peak level, you can do that because there's less of a time strain on there. You're trying to maximize the value, and part of that value is the control that you have at 2 years. You trade him in 1 year, that return's likely declined, and we could talk about that. Looking back from last year's deals, Corbin Burns, you could argue, probably the better pitcher than Dylan Cease, or at least has the better resume at the time of being traded, and he was traded for less than Dylan Cease was. The Brewers got Joey Ortiz, at the time MLB Pipeline's 63rd prospect, and then DL Hall, a left-handed pitcher, along with the 34th pick in the 2024 Round A competitive balance round of the draft. The Padres giving up Drew Thorpe, the 85th prospect in MLB, Samuel Zavala, the number 7th prospect in San Diego's system, and then Jairo Iriarte, the 8th prospect in San Diego, along with Steven Wilson. So maybe there is a Steven Wilson out there to throw in, but we're looking mainly for the headliners here. I think the biggest thing for the Sox is just trying to turn a guy that could possibly be an all-star on the pitching side into an all-star on the bat side. And it's just, will a team give up that type of player? Because when you have, these young, exciting 19-year-olds, why would you move them? One of the players that we're going to get into, Zaire Hope, he's 19 years old. He's with the Dodgers. He was previously moved in a Cubs deal, the Michael Busch deal. It was Michael Busch for Jackson Ferris and Zaire Hope. And they got 2 players that were under 22 years old with a ton of control and seemingly a ton of potential. Guys that are going to be on the top 100 list coming up for Major League Baseball. I think the whole point is just about resetting this clock. When will the White Sox actually be competitive? It might not be until 2027. That's just the unfortunate part. Garrett Crochet is probably going to be good in 2025, 2026, 2027, and he'll help some ball club, and it's just, unfortunately, not the Sox. Do you think the, at least, landscape of trading prospects will change a little bit? Do you think that GMs will ease off a little bit and maybe be able to hug less?
Again, I think it depends on the team. I think that there is probably some urgency among teams that doesn't exist among others, right? I mean, I think we've so many people for multiple years now, and multiple players, when we've had these kind of conversations, have been like, trade with the Orioles, trade with the Orioles, trade with the Orioles. The Orioles are expecting to be good for a long time. Right. And I think that the idea that they have all these young players helps that timeline for them, right? And so while absolutely the Orioles are in a position to win the World Series next year if they push, right? It's not, they don't need to go all in because they're already good and they want to remain good past that. The Yankees, on the other hand, I mean, winning the pennant's pretty good. And the first time they had done so in 15 years. But the expectations in New York are World Series or bust. And that they didn't go home with that trophy probably creates a little bit more urgency in New York. Probably creates a little bit more urgency for that front office to say, all right, maybe we do part with a top prospect to get the guy who's going to get us that trophy. And there are other teams in various degrees of each of those situations. That being said, I mean, it's about the value matchup for Chris Getz. Chris Getz will trade Garrett Crochet to any team in baseball if he gets the prospects that he wants back for him. And so that could be, the teams at the very tippy top, like the Yankees and the Dodgers, who are trying to get right back to that fall classic. Or maybe the Diamondbacks decide that they want to make a run in the NL West. Maybe the Cubs decide that not that the Cubs are low, but they didn't make the playoffs this year. Maybe they decide it's time to take the NL Central, push them over the top. So I think he'll listen to anything out there, and you don't need to make whittle a list down to 2 or 3 teams. I think you've got one that's 8 teams long.
8 teams long. Guess who's number 1 on that list?
The Cubs?
No.
The Dodgers?
No, you already said them.
The Yankees?
No, the Orioles.
Yeah, it's the Orioles.
Come on.
I was just throwing out teams. Yeah,
of course. Orioles, of course, are the number 1 team on this list. We'll get to why, but it's just because they have so many players and so many packages that they could possibly put together. It's mainly just, will they put those packages together and will they pull the trigger? At least to your point about the Yankees, the thing that came to my mind is the John Bender quote. Does Barry Manilow know you raid his wardrobe? If the Yankees go out and trade for Garrett Crochet, Carlos Rodon, Garrett Crochet, Ian Hamilton,
Tommy Kahnle, Tim
Hill, there it is.
Jake
Cousins, like just all these pitchers from the White Sox making up the AL pennant winning New York Yankees. It's not the pitching that's the problem. Chris Getz told you it's the hitting. Hit that thumbs up button. We got 13 likes and 45 viewers. The team that is leading this all off is the Orioles for me, and we'll get to the full list in a second. The biggest question with the Orioles is not who can they trade, it's just who are they willing to give up. I don't think they're willing to give up Jackson Holliday. That seems to be pretty clear. Samuel Basallo is a top 100 prospect, under 20 years old. That seems like the perfect player to headline a package, but it didn't seem like they were willing up to give Basallo for Cease last year. Will something have changed with Basallo's time in the minor leagues this year that makes them think differently about the player, or maybe losing Corbin Burnes changes their mindset? And I think the biggest thing, too, about the Orioles, Santander versus Burnes. There was a quote out there that they're going to be going after Santander, and if they're not able to acquire Santander and bring him back, then they'd go after Burnes. So it really kind of depends. If they are signing Santander, it seems likely that they'd go away from Burnes and look for starting pitching in a different place. So if you're wanting an Oriole package, I think the biggest hope for you is that Anthony Santander stays an Oriole.
And I mean, we've talked about it before, and it makes perfect sense to me. The Orioles really need Corbin Burnes back. They need him for their starting rotation. So if you're the Orioles, you want to make the big splash, you want to top the Yankees who just won the pennant, you go sign Corbin Burnes, and then you trade for Garrett Crochet, because Crochet is making, compared to what Burnes is going to make, very little. Why not have 2 at the top of that rotation, the way that the Yankees do in Cole and Rodon, the way that plenty of other teams do in having that 1-2 punch? I think that makes a ton of sense for the Orioles. Of course, I don't have the obligation of having to pay anybody as being the Orioles owner. But remember, too, that the Orioles have a new owner, and that the impetus to spend right out of the box as the new owner might be pretty high.
Fingers crossed. We would love to see owners who like to spend money. It makes baseball better. We're going to take a break, and we are going to let you know about some of our sponsors, and then we'll talk about the top 8 teams most likely to trade for Garrett Crochet. Do we have a sounder for that? Like a graphic? No? Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. I don't think we do. I think you know if we
get
would.
that the Ocho drop. Hey, Sean.
Hey, Vinny.
We are sponsored by Chicago Sports Network.
We are?
It is, yes.
Oh.
It is the new home of the Blackhawks, the Bulls, and the White Sox and all of their games. CHSN will broadcast more than 300 live games per year across the Blackhawks, Bulls, and White Sox, and will feature a full lineup of original Chicago-focused sports content. They're also Chicago-based, Chicago-built, and Chicago to the core, and they're bringing it to every corner of Chicago across all 77 neighborhoods and beyond. At CHSN, Chicago comes first. Visit chsn.com for more info on how to watch Bulls, Hawks, and Sox games all seasons long.
Thank you, Vinny. And we also want to let you know about our friends over at Blue Chew. They say first impressions are important, but what about lasting impressions? That's where Blue Chew comes in. Blue Chew helps boost your confidence in the bedroom so you can stay hard and perform your very best. You may be wondering, does Blue Chew work? If you're asking that, we want you to know that Blue Chew is putting their mouth where their money is putting their money where their mouth is, not their mouth where their money is putting their money where their mouth is by giving you a month free. Blue Chew is an online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but at a fraction of the cost and in a chewable form. The process is simple. You can sign up at bluechew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. Blue Chew tablets are made in the U.S. and prepared and shipped directly to your door. And the best part is, it's all done online. That means no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversations, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. And you could take them anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. So again, you may be asking, does it work? Do you think you don't think you need it? You could try it for a month and see. You're going to love it, and your partner's going to love it too. So go check them out for free. Try Bluetooth free when you use our promo code ALLCITY at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's bluechew.com, promo code ALLCITY to receive your first month free. Visit bluechew.com for more details and important safety information. We thank Blue Chew for sponsoring the podcast. Coming back here on the CHGO White Sox Podcast, we'll be talking more about the teams that will be looking to trade for Garrett Crochet. Number one, the Orioles. Again, I don't think it's possible or likely that they would trade a Jackson Holiday or a Basayo. And then the other players, you get into the Mayo, the Kjerstads, and the Kausers. The issue that I see with them, they're all 24 and 25. That seems just out of the White Sox timeline. Wouldn't you want to rather have a player that's, in their teens and maybe don't need to be on this 2025 roster? Because it would seem that Kjerstad, Kauser, and Mayo, even though they might not be or might be struggling to make the Orioles roster, they wouldn't struggle to make the White Sox roster.
No, but I also don't think you get picky about that kind of thing unless it's very obvious, right? Unless there's a guy that only has 1, 2, 3 years left to control. Those guys are well above that. Those guys are in the 4 or 5 range. And obviously Chris Getz is hoping that in 4 or 5 years he has turned around the White Sox to the point where they can be contenders. Now, you're right in the idea of do you trade for somebody who's only going to be on 1 year of your good teams or 2 years of your contending teams when you're giving up a guy who's made an all-star team? But I don't think you get too terribly picky in that regard if you're Chris Getz and you are happy with somebody as long as the control is right. I don't think the control is they have to be teenagers or bust, or they have to be under 22. I think you can get a player who is older than that as long as the control is there. Right.
You don't think they would be more inclined though? Because you kind of talked about it depends on where that level or that talent is at the level. If they're deciding between a package between a guy that's, kind of a fringe AAA MLB player and a guy that's a AA player, do you think they might go with the AA player just because, hey, again, we don't have to put that guy on a roster?
I think you get the best player.
All right, that's fair. Yeah. I'm all for that as well. I don't know if the White Sox would think they're getting the best player from the Orioles in a package, and I think that might be the biggest consideration for them. The one player that I didn't mention that could also be a possibility, he's still 22 now, will turn 23 in December. That's Enrique Bradfield. He is former first-rounder, 17th pick in the 2023 draft out of Vanderbilt. He's an outfielder who has a left-handed bat. So I could see anyone from Holiday, Basayo, Mayo, Kjerstad, Kauser, Bradfield, or Vance Honeycutt, who they just drafted in the 2024 draft, being traded. All those guys are just kind of fringe possible headliners. I'm just looking for the player that could possibly headline in a Crochet deal.
I I would be very surprised if the White Sox got the number one prospect in baseball for Garrett Crochet.
I'm just throwing out possibilities. I do not think if I was putting what player they would receive for Crochet, Holiday is not even in the consideration. I'm just saying more like with the Orioles, they have just a wealth of prospects. Will they be willing to trade from any of them? Obviously, Jackson Holiday's not going to be the player traded.
Well, and I would remember, I would remember this too. A player who is a lower end top 10 prospect in the Orioles system is the number one prospect for a lot of teams in baseball, right? And so, if there was a deal made with a team that is rich in prospects and has just a stacked top 10 prospect list, and you hear that the White Sox, for their all-star left-handed starting pitcher, got the number 8 and number 10 prospect on that list, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
No, right. And two, here's the other thing. At least just looking at Fangraphs farm system rankings, they put a value to all the players within the farm system. The number one most valuable farm system right now, the Tampa Bay Rays, $271 million. Second, the Los Angeles Dodgers, $248 million. Third is Boston, who we're going to talk about here in just a second, $240 million. Do you know who's fourth?
The White Sox?
The Chicago White Sox, $230 million. And then at fifth, the Cubs, just behind them, $229 million. Sixth is Baltimore at $192. So you can even see in the top five, all of those teams are valued above $225 million. The sixth team under $200 million at $192.
Fangraphs says the White Sox have the fourth best farm system in baseball.
Yes, and that's mainly because you have Colson being ranked as a 55 future value. You have Schultz being 55 ranked future value. They have two bats at 50 future value, who I would have to assume are Wilco and Caro, and then two future 50 value arms, who I would have to say is Thorpe and Smith.
Well, Thorpe's on the big league team.
I think he's still counting him as a prospect. Oh no, it's not even Thorpe. It's Iriarte. So boom, there you go. So yeah, I mean the White Sox they do have one of the better farm systems, weirdly, in baseball. I know it doesn't feel that way, but they just have a ton of pitching. Second is the Boston Red Sox. The team or the player that I think I would like to headline this deal if it was the Red Sox, Christian Campbell. Now, he was just named the minor league player of the year. Maybe this is a little bit too similar to Yohan Moncada, but here is Christian Campbell, the current minor league player of the year. He was sixth in the rankings, the Fangraphs rankings, in July. So I assume that Campbell will likely be a top 3 prospect for him. The issue, though, at least for Campbell, is he's also in a farm system with Marcelo Mayer and Roman Anthony. Those two guys are younger, and they have been above him in the prospect rankings for a while now. So I think Campbell could possibly be a player they deal with because there's a little bit of excess with those players that they have. You have Anthony, Marcelo Mayer, and Campbell all trying to be the top prospect in your system. I don't think there's a ton of playing spot because they all kind of are middle infielders. Maybe there is enough of a wealth in the Red Sox organization that they go out and think, hey, Crochet is a player that not only can be the ace of our staff, but could be an extension. Is it kind of poetic that they'd be trading a hurling left-hander to Boston maybe way too early?
Yeah, poetic, I suppose. But listen, you got to go get the best guy that you can. I think it comes down to the interest level of these teams and the interest and the willingness to part with those kind of guys. You asked me earlier about, are GMs going to continue to value their prospects so highly and be so unwilling to get rid of them? I would again caution that they traded a guy who finished second in the in the Cy Young race in Dylan Cease for a prospect package that was headlined by the guy who is almost in the high 80s in the prospect rankings. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they're going to be getting a guy who's in the top 3 or the top 6, right?
Well, top 3 of the Red Sox
of Boston.
Yeah,
okay, so I guess I'm just saying
but he's probably going to be a top 50 prospect. Period.
And I totally understand why White Sox fans would be expecting that kind of return, considering they just watched Garrett Crochet and the kind of season that he had. But keep in mind that Cease deal, and keep in mind that it could be, as somebody said, they'd be lucky to get one top 100 prospect. That might be the case. And you might be looking at maybe volume. Maybe Chris Getz gets 4 guys instead of 2 because they're not ranked as super high. But yeah, it's definitely worth remembering that the types of trades, like you just brought up, Chris Sale gets you Moncada and Kopech. Those kind of trades are very few and far between these days.
And I mean, hey, they got star power. I mean, those were the players that you wanted from the Red Sox at the time, and it just didn't turn out the way that you wanted to. And obviously, those players have potential. It's just mainly been a smattering of injuries and just, failures, if you want to call them that, from those players to reach that certain potential. Because, hey, once Kopech got out of here and went to the Dodgers, he looked great. I'm assuming Moncada, once he goes plays for another team in 2025, he'll look all right as long as he's healthy. And you mentioned it too. Campbell was just fantastic in AAA this year. He was mainly in AA and Advanced A, but they even gave him a shot late in the season to play for Worcester. 19 games played at AAA, 286, 412 on base percentage, 486 slugging in 85 at bats, 4 homers, 2 doubles. I mean, I wouldn't trade him
That's Worcester, by the way.
Worcester.
You don't pronounce that R.
Worcester.
No,
Okay.
Worcester.
Worcester.
You don't pronounce a lot of the letters in that word, to be honest.
No,
but
especially with that accent.
Yeah,
no.
Worcester. They're the Woo Sox.
Okay, all right. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Third team on the list, and it's going off of what Buster Olney and Jeff Passan had to say, saying that the Red Sox and Mets would be favorite. I think actually I should probably put the Mets here above the Red Sox. I think the Red Sox have more to deal from. I think the Red Sox would be a more alluring candidate. I'm looking for more maybe of that headliner rather than the depth here. I don't think you're wrong, though, by saying maybe you get 4 prospects rather than just that one big one. I think Campbell would be one of those one big ones if you're trading with the Red Sox. The third team, the Mets, maybe this is that player, Jeremy Rodriguez, 18-year-old shortstop. He's 4th, according to Fangraphs, in the Mets system. And the big thing about him, do you know who he was traded for in the 2023 deadline?
He's a Met. 2023 deadline. Scherzer? No. Who?
Tommy Pham. So Tommy Pham was dealt for a 17-year-old. Now he's a top 5 player in the Mets prospect, according to Fangraphs. Rodriguez could be one of those players. Again, you're getting from a premium position at shortstop, and it could be a Tatis-like player where, the ceiling is really unclear right now. And because he's doing so well as an 18-year-old, the more and more he grows, the stronger and stronger he gets. This could be a player that could be a $300 million player. And also, hey, he could be a player that never gets to AA. I mean, that's just kind of what happens when you're dealing with 18-year-olds. But Rodriguez is a person that wasn't highly thought of by the Diamondbacks to the point where they're trading, him for Tommy Pham. And now he's possibly a top 5 player that I wouldn't mind headlining a Crochet deal. Fourth, I have the Dodgers. I don't think that they make a ton of sense. It seems like they're going to be going after Roki Sasaki, according to ESPN, the Japanese player that did phenomenally well in the World Baseball Classic. It seems like they're the favorites, is what ESPN is reporting, to acquire Sasaki. So maybe if they require Sasaki and they're still looking for starting pitchings, they go after Crochet. I just don't think that's likely going to be what they go after, because they have Ohtani, then Sasaki, then Yamamoto, then Glasnow, then possibly Kershaw, et cetera. Huh?
They have enough.
They do have enough.
They're done.
They're really rich, though.
Commissioner Sarah has stepped in and said, "That's it, Dodgers. You got
It's annoying
Simmer
just
down.
how many people they can get.
It is annoying, but again, they only have 1 World Series since 1988. Oh, right. Well, yeah, the 2021 that people don't count. But like one
they have the trophy. I guarantee you.
162 one. So yeah, at least the Dodgers, I don't think it makes sense for them, and especially their top prospects being Dalton Rushing and Diego Cartaya. Both of those players are catching prospects right now, and I don't think I would want a catcher being the headliner. I need a player that is going to at least be in a position that's going to lend to more durability, right? I mean, just with that catching position, being in that squatting position, you really can't play every single day. They don't make them like Ivan Rodriguez, mainly because Ivan Rodriguez was taking steroids and helping out his knees. But like, I think you got to look for a shortstop. You got to look for an outfielder, or even just a middle infield position player, shortstop or second. Cartaya and Rushing wouldn't make sense as a headliner for me. That's why I would throw in Zaire Hope, the kid that I brought up earlier. He was a part of the Cubs trade for Michael Busch last year. Wasn't really seen as much, but him being as young as he was, 18 years old, he had a great year with the Dodgers in their minor league system, had a great Arizona Fall League. He just looks like a booming bat at 18 years old from the left-handed side. I've seen all this footage for him, and I'm like, all right, we can have Colson Montgomery and Zaire Hope, the dominators of the AFL. It sounds good to me, but I don't know if the Dodgers are going to end up being the team that trades for Crochet.
Chris Getz and Sean Anderson are building a team that's going to just dominate the Big Ten.
Hell yeah.
A bunch of 19 and 20-year-olds.
Watch out for Noah Schultz.
You know who was a catching prospect once upon a time? Kyle Schwarber.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't think these guys are Kyle Schwarber-like, though. None of these guys
I was saying that mostly as a joke, but I guess my point
2.0.
is when you're looking for bats, you look for bats. And you guys have talked all the time about guys that you maybe can move around. I think the idea is you cross the bridge when you come to it, right? I mean, you don't only go get you don't say no to the top catching prospect in baseball or one of them, who's likely up there because of what he can do with the bat, because maybe Edgar Caro will be good. You know what I mean? You don't put a cap on the number of position or the number of guys at every position that you have in the minor leagues. There's a reason they took shortstops in back-to-back or 2 out of 3 drafts in the first round. You create depth and that sort of thing by acquiring the best player you can acquire.
Yeah, and at least for Kaitaya being 22 years old, didn't have his best year overall in 400 plate appearances, both AA and AAA. 221 average, 323 on base percentage, 363 slugging percentage. But rushing, the complete opposite, also in AA and AAA, 503 plate appearances, 271 batting average, 385 on base percentage, and a 512 slugging percentage. So maybe rushing could be one of those players that you just find a spot for him because the bat plays. But if there is a player that I'd like from the Dodgers, Zaire Hope is on there. We can give Uncle Ted his flowers now. On 5th on this ranking, I have the New York Yankees. I don't know if they're going to be that active in trading and then also signing an extension. I think their biggest focus is Soto, and if they're able to get Soto, I think they're kind of being like, oh well, our offseason's accomplished. Cole seemingly is going to be staying there for 5 more years now. I think as long as they get Soto, I think they'd probably be happy.
They need him to
with their offseason, right?
They can't let him go.
So I don't even know how long that is going to play out. I think it's possible that Soto doesn't sign until February, and it's possible that Crochet's traded. And if they are going to be dealing with the Yankees, Uncle Ted's throwing out, hey, get Spencer Jones. I think that would be the headliner. We heard that being the player that the White Sox were interested for Dylan Cease last year. Uncle Ted throwing out Clark Schmidt, Spencer Jones, and Ben Rice as a potential package. I think the biggest thing with Spencer Jones is last year his value was at its highest. And then this year there are some questions about his year with the Yankees in AA. 200 Ks, less than 20 homers. He did have 25 strikeouts, being 6'6", which is the impressive part about him is the power-speed combination. But again, a sub 340 on-base percentage for Jones. I do wonder how intriguing of a headliner he is. I don't know if they have that true headliner for a package. I think, again, these other 4 teams, the Dodgers, Mets, and Red Sox and Orioles, all can beat them with a headliner of a deal. Jones is interesting. Who doesn't love anyone who's 6'6", can hit 20 bombs and steal 25 stolen bases, but also he's doing that at the AA level. What is it going to look like at AAA like we saw with Colson Montgomery, and what will it look at the major league level? The body's there, but it kind of seems like you're not a wrestling guy.
I mean, once upon a time.
Okay. Do you remember Matt Morgan, the blueprint from TNA?
No.
Yeah, okay. So
I watched WCW.
It seems like it seems very much like Kevin Nash, Goldberg,
big sexy.
Just get
Goldberg.
We're gonna put this guy in the main event because he's big.
Yeah.
So Spencer Jones seems like that type of Matt Morgan guy.
I was gonna bring up the idea of what Chris said last year when he traded Aaron Bummer to the Braves and he got 5 guys. Right. The idea that it was important to turn the number 1 into the number 5. Right. Mm-hmm. And obviously, there was a reason he was able to do that, and you saw it play out over the course of the year. And multiple of those players will not even be with the organization, on the other side of this offseason. But that's something to keep in mind as he makes moves going forward. However, I'm not quite sure that mindset is applicable to this opportunity with Crochet. I think this opportunity is about getting the best players and the most talent you possibly can, because this is the chance that he has to stack the top of his prospect rankings, right? Or fill out some spots in that lineup of the future. It's not necessarily just a dice roll where you're like, oh, you can give me 6 guys for this one good player? Sure, let's do it. Let's see what happens. I think for better or worse, he's got to hit, right? He's got to hit on what he does with Crochet. in a way that when you acquire a lot of those teenagers like he did at the trade deadline, I'm not sure you know that you're going to or not. Those guys, hey, I'm going to trade Tanner Banks for an 18-year-old, right? Like that would be, oh, if it turns out that's great. If it doesn't, it was Tanner Banks kind of thing. This is Garrett Crochet. You need to get some guys with a significant chance of hitting, and maybe you only know that if they are at the higher ends of the minor leagues, if they are in AA or AAA.
Moment of Zendo says Moises Ballesteros, Kevin Alcantara, and Jefferson Rojas for Crochet, who says no. That's a Cubs White Sox trade. I believe that the CHGO Cubs podcast would say no to that. I think Jed Hoyer would say no. I'm fine with that. That's the Cubs' top 4th prospect, 8th prospect, and then I believe Rojas is 9. All of them are position players. If you're getting a team's three of a team's top 10 prospects and all of them are position players, I think Chris Getz is pretty happy.
That kind of sounds like something that Chris Getz would do.
It seems honestly a little bit too rich. I don't even know if the Cubs need to give up that much to even get Crochet, just because, again, I was surprised with how little Cease ended up getting last year, only being headlined by the 85th prospect in all of baseball. I thought they could have gotten a little bit more. So, I mean, Ballesteros, Alcantara, and Rojas, I'll take it.
But also, he wasn't shy on waiting. You know what I mean? Like, he wasn't. Yeah, right. He was fine with waiting until March, which makes you think he would have been fine until waiting until July with Dylan Cease. So he liked that deal, and he got a deal that he was happy with. That's what he's looking for with Crochet. Obviously, everybody's entitled to their own review of it, and nobody's is going to prove correct until those guys are major leaguers or not, right? So I don't think that you necessarily have to think, oh, he's only going to get a little bit. It's what the market dictates, but it's what Chris Getz wanted, and I think he's going to do the same thing with Crochet.
The other 3 teams on here, and 2 of them are just because of their GMs, San Diego Padres and Seattle Mariners. I think they have the players to headline. DeVries and Salas for the Padres could be headliners. And the Mariners, I think Colt Emerson could be a headliner, but it's just about Dipoto and who's the guy from San Diego?
Preller,
pulling that trigger. And then the 8th team, you see a new head man in San Francisco being Buster Posey. Do they really go into that pitching side? They've always been very pitching heavy. They really don't care about having those brand name hitters. They're always fine with just platooning guys and making sure that the platoon matchups are right. Do they really push the chips in and say that's a guy that really really want and Garrett Crochet? I don't think the Giants would be opposed to it because it does seem like they're trying to spend the big money. They're always trying to get a big name in the offseason. I think the Giants could be a possibility, but we'll see what happens. We'll see how this all shakes out and plays out. With Luis Robert, Chris Getz saying, we're going to wait on that. Do you think he gets traded this offseason?
No.
Okay. I agree with that. I think they want to see him, have a great April. If he goes out and just looks like what he did in 2023, I think that interest is going to be aplenty.
They have a guy who has MVP style potential. You can't trade him after he has a terrible season.
Right.
If you're going to trade it, that would be selling at your absolute lowest point. I don't know if he gets back to 2023 numbers, but if he could flash it for a couple of months, that changes the story completely.
Yeah, and even with Cease, too. I mean, he didn't have a season like 2022, so it seemed like that hurt his value a little bit in the trade market. Getz got a deal that he ended up liking, but that was still in March. Like, I think if the interest was there, and if he had a season like 2022 in 2023, he's probably dealt by December or January just because there's less of that question. All right, let's get into the free agent showdown for today. We got about 6 minutes left in the CHGO White Sox podcast. Make sure you're hitting that thumbs up button and make sure you are subscribing to the CHGO Sports YouTube channel. We have a ton of great Chicago content for you. Not only do we have the White Sox show coming to you live tomorrow and Friday at 4 p.m., but we got a Bulls pregame show today. Also, a Blackhawks show coming to you live, a postgame show for both the Bulls and the Hawks tonight. All right, let's get into the free agent showdown, Vinny. We're going to right field today. These are outfielders, guys that I think could possibly play right field. Maybe they're not always or have been right fielders in the past year. I know this guy on the left, Michael Conforto, played some left field this year, but for 2024, Conforto's one of the guys I'm throwing out there. Shocker, 488.
Your guy.
My guy. 488 plate appearances in 2024 for the Giants, 20 home runs, 112 weighted runs created plus, 118 118 strikeouts to 42 walks and a 1.3 FWAR. And then Mark Canha, a former Met, Tiger, and Giant, 462 plate appearances, 7 home runs, 102 weighted runs created plus, 96 strikeouts to 51 walks, and a 1 FWAR. Conforto versus Canha. Who is more likely for the White Sox?
I mean, I guess Conforto's probably the bigger name, right? Does he get maybe more years? Maybe Canha is a 1-year guy and that you can, do a little flipping at the deadline if need be. He's been a player who you always see him coming up clutch in some fashion. It seems like maybe a good veteran to have there for some younger guys. So I guess I'd say Canha, but he's probably someone who gets a lot of interest because of what he's been able to do for a lot of different teams.
Yeah, he seems like a leader too. He is a person that's not afraid to say his thoughts and feelings. Being 35 years old, I think he'll probably get less money than Conforto too. Conforto being in such a pitcher-friendly park for most of his home games and still hitting 20 home runs, I think that's probably a boost to him, being a guy that say, hey, well, if he's in Great American Ballpark, Yankee Stadium, maybe that number's closer to 30 than 25 because he's not playing in San Francisco, especially being around 31. I think that's a guy that's going to get probably about 12 to 15 million a year, where Canha could just be a 1-year, $8 million deal, and that's a guy that they flip at the deadline. He's a guy that could play pretty much all around the diamond. He could play first, left field. I think he could play even third base a little bit, right field. So I think Peralta makes sense, but even then, it's a guy that's worth 1 FWAR. It's a guy that can control the strike zone, nearly even less than a 2-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio there, being under 100 and over 50 walks. So maybe a little bit too pricey, Sarah. Can we see the other options? I've thrown out Michael Taylor before. Taylor in 300 plate appearances, 5 home runs, 50 weighted runs created plus. That's more like it. 105 strikeouts to 23 walks and a 0.4 FWAR. Also, Max Kepler. We know the Twins are going away from as much or spending as much money as they have been with the lack of an RSN deal. 399 plate appearances for Kepler, 8 home runs, 94 weighted runs created plus, 80 strikeouts to 22 walks, and 1 FWAR. Are these a little bit more closer to who the White Sox could sign? Am I even a little bit too off with Kepler? I think Canha might be a little bit more closer to a White Sox signing than Kepler.
Yeah, maybe. I think, again, like I've said in the last couple of days, I think you look for somebody who maybe didn't have a great year last year, and certainly Taylor falls into that category from the offensive standpoint, but maybe has something that the White Sox think can be rediscovered and turned into a flip guy at the deadline. The idea is you're spending a small amount of money on somebody whose market is small because his year was bad last year. But then, hey, all of a sudden, come July, wouldn't somebody like to add that to their bench for the playoffs? I think Paul DeYoung. I don't think he blew anybody away with what he did last year, but he was able to hit enough home runs that they got something for him.
Yeah, the thing with Taylor is he'll bring defense, and I think that's probably the thing that Chris Getz spouted last year. I think it would probably be a similar plan to this year, and at least to Uncle Ted in the comments. David Peralta, again, one of those older players that could possibly be a signing, but you look, he only had 20 plate appearances against lefties. He's mainly going to be a guy that only bats against right-handed pitchers. Who's that other righty then that plays the outfield for the White Sox? Because you have Colas, Deloach, and Fletcher. All those guys are lefties. You even have Benintendi, that's a lefty as well. Who is the player that would platoon with David Peralta, and could you hide Peralta enough that he would still have trade value? I think Canha, being a guy that has really done this every single year, no matter the platoon or not, I think that could be a player that they could go after. But again, end all be all, is he going to be too expensive? And that's the thing with the White Sox. The fun story going on with the White Sox is will players even like Mark Canha be a little bit too rich for their blood? We're going to wrap it up. Thank you for watching the CHGO White Sox podcast. We'll be here tomorrow and Friday at 4 p.m. We have post-game shows for the Blackhawks and Bulls tonight. If you are looking to get the recap, Mario, Jay, and Greg have you covered on the Blackhawks side. Matt Peck, Big Dave, and Will Gottlieb have you covered on the Bulls side. So stay tuned tonight. Hit that like button and make sure you're subscribing to the CHGO Sports YouTube channel. We want to let you know, too, to become a CHGO diehard today. We're building the biggest and best community of Chicago sports fans. We want you to be a part of it. Again, you can sign up today. You get a shirt of your choice, access to our exclusive written content, plenty of discounts, merch, and events, and you get access to our CHGO Discord lounge where we get to hang out with a ton of Chicago sports fans. You get to talk White Sox, Bulls, Blackhawks, Bears with all of your fellow Chicago diehards. So come join the fun today. Herb, Vinnie, and I are always hanging out in there. So come chat with us after the show. Hit that thumbs up button. Make sure to subscribe to the CHGO Sports YouTube channel. Thank you to Sarah for producing the show. Thank you to Vinnie Duber. I'm Sean Anderson. And happy birthday to our main guy, Herb Lawrence. We will see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. Was that you petting Herb?
No, like presenting him like Vanna
Herb.
White.
Oh.
Like, yeah, like, oh, it's the Herb part of the set.
You have bought an E. All right, that's going to do it. We're going to see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. Goodbye.
We all silly like the mayor.